Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at cybersecurity for everyone, a podcast episode packed with useful info. And lucky for us, we have a cybersecurity expert here to break it all down.
Always happy to dive in. Cybersecurity is such a dynamic field. There's always something new to learn.
Totally. And this podcast episode really stresses that cybersecurity is, well, it's for everyone, not just tech wizards or, huge companies.
You got it. It's easy to think, why would anyone want to hack little old me? But actually, a lot of cybercriminals, they target everyday folks precisely because they think those folks have weaker defenses.
It's kind of like assuming you don't need to lock your doors just because you don't live in, like, a super ritzy neighborhood.
Exactly. And the thing is, these cybercriminals are getting really good at what they do. One thing we see a lot of is phishing.
Yeah, phishing. We've all heard of it. But some of the examples in this podcast are like, whoa, you really see how easy it is to fall for these scams.
It all comes down to psychology. Hackers, they know how to push our buttons. They play on our trust, our fear of missing out, stuff like that. And they can make those emails and messages look just like they're from, say, your bank.
And before you know it, you've clicked a link or downloaded something and boom, you've got malware on your computer.
It's a Trojan horse, right? Seems innocent, but it's carrying something dangerous.
And this podcast gets into all the different types of malware out there. It's not like a one-size-fits-all thing. Some malware is for spying, some is for, well, other nasty stuff.
Right. Some of it's designed to basically spy on you, record your keystrokes, steal your passwords. Other types might encrypt your files and then demand a ransom to get them back.
Ransomware. Huh, that one's scary. It's basically digital kidnapping, like they're holding your data hostage.
It is a powerful analogy. It really gets the point across. And it's not just about money, right? Think about losing all those family pictures or, important work files.
It's a nightmare. And it makes you realize, like, how much we rely on our data these days, how important it is to protect it.
And that brings us to one of the most basic but crucial aspects of cybersecurity. Strong passwords.
Passwords, ugh, the bane of my existence.
I know. But a strong, unique password for each online account, it's the first line of defense, really. It's so important.
The podcast mentions some really common password mistakes, like using easy-to-guess words or reusing the same password across different accounts. It's like using the same key for your house, car, and office. Not a great idea.
Absolutely. And that's where password managers can be a lifesaver. They can generate and store strong, unique passwords for you so you don't have to try and remember them all.
So password managers, okay. I have to say, though, sometimes I get a little overwhelmed with all the cybersecurity advice out there. Like, where do you even begin?
It's definitely a lot to take in. But even small steps can make a big difference. It's about building a strong foundation, adding layers of protection.
I like that. Building a foundation. So what are some of the essential building blocks we should focus on?
Well, strong passwords, as we've discussed,
Yeah.
but also enabling two-factor authentication, or 2FA, on any accounts that offer it. It adds an extra layer of security, basically requiring a second form of identification, like a code sent to your phone.
I've seen that option a lot, but I'll admit I sometimes just skip it because, well, it's an extra step.
Yeah, I get it. But those few extra seconds are worth it. Think of it like putting a deadbolt on your front door. It might take a little longer, but it makes it much harder for someone to break in.
Good point. Strong passwords, 2FA, what else?
Keeping your software and apps up to date. Those updates usually include security patches that fix vulnerabilities. Kind of like, regular car maintenance. You want to catch those problems early before they get serious.
Yeah, like preventative care for your digital life.
Exactly. And speaking of prevention, let's talk about a big myth around cybersecurity. The idea that hackers only target, famous people.
Oh yeah, I've definitely heard that one before. Why would anyone want to hack me? I'm not a celebrity.
It's tempting to think that way, but cybercriminals are opportunistic. They're looking for easy targets, whoever they can exploit, like saying you don't need to lock your car because you don't drive a fancy car.
So basically, we're all potential targets, whether we think we're important online or not.
Exactly. And another misconception this podcast tackles is the idea that public Wi-Fi is totally safe for, casual browsing.
Public Wi-Fi, it's so convenient, but is it really that risky?
Well, public Wi-Fi networks often don't have the best security. It can be easy for hackers to intercept your data. Imagine you're checking your bank account at a coffee shop and someone nearby is snooping on your activity.
Okay, now that's scary. So should we avoid public Wi-Fi completely?
Not necessarily. The podcast recommends using a VPN or virtual private network. It basically creates a secure tunnel for your data so it's harder for anyone to snoop, even on public Wi-Fi.
So it's like putting your data in an armored car before it travels across the internet.
Yeah. A good way to think about it. And there are a lot of good VPN services out there, so it's worth looking into.
Okay, VPNs, noted. So we've talked about strong passwords, two-factor authentication, being careful on public Wi-Fi. What else should we keep in mind?
It's not just about the tools and tech, it's about developing a mindset, being aware of how hackers try to trick us.
What do you mean?
Well, things like social engineering. It's a way of manipulating people, getting them to reveal information or give access to systems.
So it's more about tricking people than, like, hacking into computers.
Exactly. It preys on our vulnerabilities. Trust, fear, our desire to help.
So cybersecurity isn't just about firewalls and passwords. It's about understanding the human element, too.
Precisely. And that's where things like cybersecurity awareness training can be so valuable. It helps people recognize these social engineering tactics and avoid falling for them.
So what are some common signs that someone might be trying to use social engineering on you?
One thing they often do is create a sense of urgency, pressure you to act without thinking. Like you get an email saying your account's been compromised and you need to do something right now to prevent further damage.
So they're trying to get you to panic and act impulsively.
Exactly. And another common tactic is to pretend to be someone you trust, like your bank or a government agency. The email might look totally real, but it's actually fake.
So they're relying on the trust we have in those institutions.
Exactly. And these attacks can be super sophisticated, They might use official logos, everything.
So how do you tell the difference between a real message and a fake one?
One good tip is to be suspicious of any message that asks for personal information, like your password, especially if it's unsolicited. Legitimate organizations, they almost never ask for that kind of info through email.
So if an email asks for your password, that's a huge red flag.
Absolutely. And always double-check the sender's email address, look for typos or anything that seems off compared to their official address.
So basically be wary of anything that seems even a little suspicious.
Exactly. And if you're ever unsure, it's best to contact the organization directly, through their official website or phone number to double-check.
Don't click on any links or reply to the email directly.
Right. And if you think you might have fallen for a social engineering attack, it's important to act fast.
Like, what should you do?
Change your passwords for any affected accounts right away. Contact your bank or credit card company if you think your financial info might be compromised. And report the incident to the right authorities.
So act fast to limit the damage.
Exactly. And remember, the more you know about cybersecurity, the better prepared you are. Understanding the threats, the tactics, it all helps.
So it's a constant learning process, staying ahead of the game as those threats evolve.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to stay up to date on cybersecurity resources and follow best practices for staying safe online.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've covered a lot today. Strong passwords, two-factor authentication, being careful on public Wi-Fi, and understanding the human element in cybersecurity, all that good stuff.
We've covered a lot of ground, but there's still much more to explore.
And that's a great place to wrap up part 1 of this cybersecurity deep dive. Be sure to join us for part 2, where we'll dig even deeper into specific threats, preventative measures, and all sorts of practical tips to stay safe in this increasingly digital world.
So last time, you mentioned feeling a little overwhelmed with all the cybersecurity advice out there. It's understandable. It can feel like a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot to remember. I mean, we talked about strong passwords, but the Cybersecurity for Everyone podcast also mentioned this idea of password hygiene. I wasn't really sure what they meant by that.
Think of it like washing your dishes. You wouldn't eat off the same plate over and over without cleaning it, right? Password hygiene is about treating your passwords with the same level of care. It's not enough to just make a strong password. You got to manage it properly, too.
Okay, I like that analogy. So what are some of the, golden rules of good password hygiene?
Well, we talked about avoiding password reuse. Using the same password for different accounts is a big no-no. If a hacker gets into one of your accounts, they could get into all of them if you use the same password.
It's like having the same lock on your front door, back door, and garage.
Exactly. Each password should be unique, like a fingerprint. And speaking of keeping things secure, where you store your passwords is just as important as how you create them.
Okay, so speaking of storing passwords, I'll admit I've been guilty of writing them down on sticky notes or even keeping them in a plain text document on my computer. Not my proudest moment.
Hey, it happens. But those methods, They're really not secure at all. If your computer gets malware, those passwords are just sitting there for the taking.
Right, okay. So sticky notes and text documents are out. What are some better options?
Password managers, those are really the best way to go. They encrypt your passwords and store them securely. You only have to remember one master password to access all your other passwords.
This is like a high-tech vault for all your passwords.
Exactly. And a lot of password managers have extra features too. They can automatically fill in passwords on websites, generate strong passwords for you, even alert you if any of your passwords have been compromised in a data breach.
Wow, that's pretty handy. So password managers are definitely worth checking out. What about antivirus software? We talked about that a bit last time, but the Cybersecurity for Everyone episode really stressed how important it is.
Antivirus software is essential. Think of it as your computer's bodyguard. It's always scanning for threats, working in the background to keep you safe.
So how does it actually work? Does it just, like, know what's good and what's bad?
It uses a few different methods. One common one is signature-based detection. It basically compares files on your computer to a database of known malware signatures.
So it's like a fingerprint database, but for bad software.
Exactly. If it finds a match, it can quarantine that file, delete it, make sure it doesn't cause any harm.
That's cool. But what about brand new malware, stuff that's never been seen before? How does antivirus software handle that?
That's where heuristic analysis comes in. Antivirus software can analyze the behavior of files and programs, see if anything seems fishy or suspicious.
So it's like a detective looking for clues that something's not right.
Exactly. And a lot of these programs use machine learning too, so they're constantly getting smarter, learning from new threats as they emerge.
That's amazing. So it's like a self-learning security system. Okay, but there are so many different antivirus programs out there. How do you choose the right one?
Yeah, it can be tough to sort through them all. But there are a few things to consider. First, think about your needs. Do you need protection for just one device? Or do you have multiple computers, phones, tablets, all that?
Right, makes sense. And what about the features? Some programs have, like, a ton of extra bells and whistles.
It's true. Some offer things like web protection, which blocks malicious websites, or email protection. Others might include a firewall, parental controls, even a VPN.
Okay, wow, that's a lot to consider.
Definitely do your research, read reviews, compare features, and make sure you're getting what you need. And think about your budget, too, of course.
So far, we've talked a lot about protecting ourselves from things like phishing and malware. But the podcast also highlighted the importance of, well, being careful about what we share online. I know I'm not always great about that.
It's easy to forget sometimes, but oversharing personal information can make us more vulnerable to cyber attacks.
What kind of information are we talking about here?
Things like your home address, phone number, birth date, even your vacation plans. Those details, they can be pieced together by cyber criminals to target you. Phishing attacks, identity theft, that sort of thing.
It's like leaving a trail of breadcrumbs for them to follow.
Exactly. And it's not just about protecting ourselves either. We should be mindful of the info we share about other people too. Friends, family members, all that.
Oh, right. I hadn't really thought about that. How could sharing info about others put them at risk?
Well, something like tagging someone in a photo that shows their location or posting about their birthday without asking, that can unintentionally expose them to cyber threats.
So be respectful of others' privacy and get their permission before sharing anything that could put them at risk.
Absolutely. It's all about being a responsible digital citizen.
Yeah.
And that responsibility extends to another online habit, clicking on links.
Ah, those little blue hyperlinks. They can take you anywhere on the internet. It's like opening a door to the unknown.
And while most links are perfectly safe, some can lead to malicious websites. Those websites might try to steal your information or infect your computer with malware.
It's like stepping on a digital landmine. So how do we avoid clicking on those bad links?
Be wary of links from senders you don't know. If you get an email from someone you don't recognize, don't click any links in it.
Don't talk to strangers online. Solid advice.
Exactly. And even if you know the sender, be careful if the message seems suspicious or just, out of character for them.
Okay, so what if the message looks legit? Like, it seems like it's from my bank or a company I use.
Even then, it's a good habit to hover your mouse over the link before clicking. Don't click yet, just hover. You'll usually see the actual web address, the URL.
So it's like peeping behind the curtain before you step onto the stage.
Exactly. Look at the URL carefully. Does it match the sender's name? Are there any misspellings? Does anything seem off? If so, don't click it.
Okay, hover before you click and watch out for anything suspicious. Got it.
And if you're ever unsure, just don't click the link at all. You can always contact the sender directly through their official website to confirm.
Better safe than sorry, right?
Exactly. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about something that's often overlooked: backing up your data.
Backups. I know I should do them more often,
Yeah.
but honestly, it's one of those things I always put off.
I get it. It can feel like a chore. But trust me, backing up your data is so important. Imagine losing all your photos, important documents, everything because of a hard drive failure or a ransomware attack.
Ugh, don't even say that. I'm starting to get anxious just thinking about it.
It's a good reminder of why backups are essential. Think of it as insurance for your digital life. It might seem unnecessary until you actually need it, and then you'll be so glad you have it.
Okay, you've convinced me. Backups are important. What's the best way to do them?
There are a few different approaches. One option is to use an external hard drive. Just copy your important files over to the hard drive and keep it somewhere safe.
So it's like having a separate copy of your data physically separated from your computer?
Exactly. That can protect you against things like hard drive crashes or if your computer gets stolen. But keep in mind, physical hard drives can get damaged too, so it's good to have multiple backups in different locations.
Multiple backups. Okay, you're really driving this point home. What are some other options for backing up data?
Cloud backup services are really popular. These services automatically back up your data to remote servers, so you don't have to worry about managing hard drives yourself.
So my data is stored securely online, even if my computer explodes.
Exactly. And a lot of cloud backup services have cool features like file sharing, version history, even the ability to access your files from any device.
Sounds convenient. But I gotta be honest, I'm always a little nervous about storing stuff in the cloud. Is it really secure?
That's a valid concern. It's crucial to choose a reputable cloud backup service that uses strong encryption to protect your data. Do your research, read their security policies before you trust them with your stuff.
Okay, so do your homework before you choose a cloud backup service.
Okay.
Got it.
And just like with physical backups, it's smart to have multiple cloud backups too. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Multiple backups, both physical and cloud.
Yeah.
Got it. Anything else I should know about backups?
Don't just set them up and forget about them. You got to test your backups regularly to make sure they're working correctly and that you can actually restore your data if you need to.
Testing backups. That's definitely something I've never done.
It's important. Imagine needing to restore your data from a backup, only to find out it's corrupted or you don't know how to restore the files. Not a good situation.
Okay, I'm definitely rethinking my backup strategy. I need to get on this, like, right now.
Good. And while we're at it, let's talk about another crucial thing: software updates.
Those pesky notifications that pop up at the worst times.
I know, they can be annoying, but they're really important for your safety online. Those updates often include security patches, which fix vulnerabilities that hackers could exploit.
So it's like patching holes in your digital armor.
Exactly. Software developers are always working to fix weaknesses in their products, but those fixes don't do anything for you if you don't install the updates.
Right. So just buying the software isn't enough. We need to keep it updated to stay as secure as possible.
Precisely. And the good news is, most software makes updating super easy these days. A lot of programs have automatic updates that you can turn on.
Automatic updates. Now you're talking.
And even if you don't use automatic updates, most programs will remind you when there are updates available. Don't ignore those reminders. Take a few minutes, install the updates, and keep your system safe.
Okay, software updates. Noted.
Now, let's talk about being careful about what we share online.
Yeah, social media can be a bit of a minefield when it comes to cybersecurity. It's easy to get carried away and share things without thinking about, who might be watching.
It's true. We need to be mindful of what information we're putting out there publicly. It can be used against us.
What are some things we should be careful about sharing?
Things like your home address, your phone number, birth date, even your vacation plans. Cyber criminals can use those details to target you.
It's like handing over the keys to your kingdom.
Exactly. And it's not just about protecting ourselves either. We need to be thoughtful about the info we share about other people too.
Right. I hadn't really thought about that. How could sharing info about others put you at risk?
Well, tagging someone in a photo that shows their location or posting about their birthday without asking, that can accidentally expose them to cyber threats.
So always be respectful of others' privacy and get their permission before sharing anything about them.
Absolutely. Be a good digital citizen. And another important part of that is being careful about clicking on links.
Yes, those little blue hyperlinks, they can be so tempting.
They can, but clicking on links in emails, social media posts, or even text messages can be risky if you're not careful.
Why is that?
Some links can lead to malicious websites. These sites might try to steal your information or infect your computer with malware.
It's like playing digital Russian roulette.
In a way, yeah. So how do we avoid clicking on those bad links? First, be wary of links from senders you don't know. If you get an email from someone you don't recognize, don't click any links in it.
Don't talk to strangers online. We've heard that one before.
Right. And even if you know the sender, be careful if the message seems suspicious or just off in some way.
Okay, so what if the message looks legit? Like
Yeah.
it seems like it's from my bank or a company I actually do business with.
Even then, it's a good idea to hover your mouse over the link without clicking. You can usually see the actual web address, the URL, that way.
So like taking a peek before you jump into the pool.
Exactly. Look at the URL carefully. Does it match the sender's name? Are there any misspellings? Does anything seem off? If so, don't click it.
Okay, hover before you click and look for anything suspicious. Got it.
And if you're ever unsure, the safest thing to do is just not click the link at all. You can always contact the sender directly, through their official website to confirm.
Good advice. Better safe than sorry.
Exactly. And if you're ever unsure about a link, it's always a good idea to err on the side of caution and not click on it.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here today. Strong passwords, software updates, being mindful of what we share online, and being super cautious about clicking on links. That's a lot to remember.
It is, but it's all part of building a strong cybersecurity foundation, being aware of the risks, taking those proactive steps to protect yourself, and developing good habits online. It all adds up.
It's like building a fortress around our digital life.
Exactly. And it's an ongoing process. We need to constantly be learning, adapting, and refining our defenses.
It's a journey we're all on together. But it's worth the effort, right? Knowing you're doing everything you can to protect yourself online, that peace of mind is priceless.
Absolutely. And remember, cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. We all need to do our part to create a safer digital world for everyone.
So let's keep talking about it. Let's share what we've learned with others, and let's work together to make the internet a more secure place.
That's a great idea. And we'll be back soon with the final part of this deep dive where we'll talk about some additional resources and tips for staying safe online.
Until then, stay curious, stay vigilant, and stay safe online. And we're back. Welcome to the final part of our cybersecurity deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, that's for sure.
We have. We've talked about everything from, the nuts and bolts of malware and phishing to the psychology behind those sneaky social engineering tricks.
And all the practical stuff we can do to protect ourselves, like those strong passwords and two-factor authentication. Oh, and keeping our software updated, of course.
Yeah.
But like we've been saying, cybersecurity, it's not a one-time thing, right? It's an ongoing process.
You got it. The bad guys, they're always coming up with new tricks, new ways to exploit vulnerabilities. So we got to keep learning, keep adapting if we want to stay ahead of the game.
So how do we stay in the loop? How do we stay informed about all the latest cybersecurity stuff?
There are some great resources out there, reputable cybersecurity websites, blogs. They often publish articles and reports about the latest threats and vulnerabilities. One that comes to mind is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA.
CSIS, I'm not familiar with that one. What kind of information do they provide?
CISA is a government agency, and they're responsible for protecting the nation's critical infrastructure from cyber threats. They have a ton of information for both individuals and organizations, like alerts about current threats, best practices for online safety, guidance on how to handle incidents if something happens.
So it's like a central hub for cybersecurity info.
Exactly. And their website is really user-friendly, with lots of resources tailored to different audiences. Another good one is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST.
NIST. Okay, what's their focus?
NIST is another government agency, and they develop and promote cybersecurity standards and frameworks. They have guidance on just about everything, from risk management and data encryption to responding to incidents and securing supply chains.
So they're more on the technical side of things.
Yeah, you could say that. They have a lot of in-depth technical guidance, which can be really helpful for organizations that manage those big, complex IT systems.
So CISA and NIST are great resources. What else can we do to boost our cybersecurity game?
Well, it's important to remember that cybersecurity isn't just about technology. It's about people, too. Human error, it plays a big role in a lot of these attacks.
Right, so it's not enough to just have the latest, greatest security software. We have to be aware of our own weaknesses, our own bad habits online.
Exactly. And that's where cybersecurity awareness training can be so helpful. It can help people understand those risks and learn how to make smarter choices online.
What does cybersecurity awareness training usually cover?
It depends on the program, of course, but a lot of them focus on recognizing those phishing scams, creating strong passwords, protecting sensitive data, and avoiding those social engineering traps.
So it's kind of like driver's ed, but for the internet, teaching people the rules of the road, how to navigate the online world safely.
I like that. A good analogy. And it's not just for individuals either. Organizations of all sizes can benefit from this kind of training for their employees.
Makes sense. The more informed your employees are, the more secure your whole organization is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And while we're talking about organizations, there's something else that's important for everyone, individuals and businesses alike, and that's incident response.
Incident response. What exactly is that?
It's about having a plan for what to do. IF, something bad happens, if you experience a cybersecurity incident, a data breach, a ransomware attack, that sort of thing.
So it's like a fire escape plan, but for your digital life.
Exactly. An incident response plan outlines the steps you need to take if you're attacked, how to contain the damage, recover your data, notify the right people, all of that.
Okay, that sounds pretty crucial. But coming up with an incident response plan, it sounds kind of overwhelming. Where do you even start?
I know, it can seem like a lot, but there are resources to help. The NIST cybersecurity framework, we mentioned them earlier, they have some great guidance on creating an incident response plan.
Okay, so NIST can help with that. What are some key things to think about when developing an incident response plan?
Well, one of the first things is to figure out what your critical assets are. What data, what systems are absolutely essential to your life or your work, financial accounts, personal info, important work files, all of that. Once you know what's most important, you can focus on protecting those things and figuring out how you'd recover them if they were compromised.
So it's like, in a fire, what are the things you absolutely need to grab on your way out?
Yeah, a good way to think about it. And it's also important to have a communication plan. Who do you need to contact if something happens? Family, friends, colleagues, maybe even law enforcement.
So it's like having a designated meeting place in case of an emergency.
Precisely. And it's a good idea to practice your incident response plan every so often, make sure you're familiar with the steps and can react quickly if something does happen.
So don't just write the plan and forget about it.
Yeah.
Practice, practice, practice.
Exactly. And always remember, cybersecurity is a journey, not a destination. We're always learning, adapting, getting better at protecting ourselves.
And it's a journey we're all on together, right?
That's right. We all have a role to play in creating a safer digital world.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. It's been a great conversation.
It has. Thanks for joining us as we explored the world of cybersecurity.
We hope you learned some valuable stuff and feel more confident about staying safe online.
Remember, stay curious, stay vigilant, and stay safe.
Great advice. We'll be back soon with another deep dive, tackling another topic that's important to you. Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those digital defenses strong.